Hey guys, we're going to show you how to flush a water heater today, live on camera. That way you can ask questions as we're going through the process. So, start off with, Erica has a couple notes on it, because I like to skip around and I miss things that are important, so we're going to stay on track for you.
Stuff he misses. Okay, so since you've been an RV tech, what have you learned about these water heaters?
This is a very, very forgotten item on people's maintenance list for their RVs. I've had people hire full-time RVers or seasonal RVers, and both, they don't flush the water heater out. Some of those are really, really gross and nasty. If you want to see some things that you really don't want to have in your water heater, you want to check out some of those reels on our Facebook page.
Okay, so move over a little bit. We can see the water heater. That's a water heater if you don't know what it is.
Normally, little door, be on the outside, some sort of a screen on it. They're usually oriented differently, but this one is a Atwood Dometic. It's an aluminum water heater tank, and we'll get into differences in a second.
Okay, so how often should you flush your water tank, and who should flush them?
So if you are a full-time RVer in your RV year-round, you should flush it 2 to 3 times per year. So once a quarter or more is always a good idea. If you're a seasonal camper, you winterize in the wintertime, you can flush it out in the fall or spring when you get in your RV packed away for the year or ready for the season.
Okay, so let's go over the tools that you're going to need for this.
Really don't need too much. So
wait, did we talk about what happens if you don't flush it? The calcium?
Oh, no.
Yeah, this is why you need to flush this thing.
So if you're not flushing your water heater, water is usually hard, and hard water has calcium minerals inside that water. When it goes into your water heater, all that settles to the bottom, and if you're not flushing it, all of that calcium and sediment will build up in the bottom of the water heater. It'll coat the element inside. It heats up the water, so your water does not heat up quite as fast. And those calcium chunks can plug the lines of your hot water and make your water pressure a lot lower in the shower or kitchen sink throughout the RV. So getting that gunk out of there before it causes damage or just makes you frustrated is a good idea.
Well, and what you find is, like when we were just in Texas working, people bought a new RV in like 2017 or 18, and now they're complaining that their water pressure is really bad and they can't take a shower. And this is it, and they never flush their water heater.
Yeah, or they don't change their anode rod all in that same process. It's very neglected, and they can be leading to leaks of the water heater and just issues inside. There was some gross stuff I found out of those water heaters, let me tell you.
Yeah, okay, let's go over the tools now. And I'm going to put the links to these tools in the description once this video's over.
Okay, so for this water heater, we have a ratchet and socket. This one is 15/16 in the socket. If you have an anode rod, it'd be 1 inch and a 1/16 socket. And we'll have some Teflon tape so we can seal up that plug when we put it back in there. And we have a water heater flush wand. The screws onto the end of a garden hose. There's a little on-off valve on it. This is plastic, so it doesn't damage stuff when you put it inside the water heater and flush it out. And I don't know if you can see them, I have my muck boots on because water splashing down here, and it's smarter to do that versus have wet shoes.
Yeah, okay. So before we start, since we're live, we're not going to move the camera around and get it all bouncy for you. What do we need to do to prep to flush the water heater?
So to start off with, turn the water heater off. Turn the switches off on the inside, turn the circuit breaker off. That way we can let the water heater cool down. You can just plain on wait for it to cool down, or you can turn a hot faucet on and let water run through. That way the water heater cools off. So you do not want to take the plug out of the water heater when the water is hot, because you will burn yourself.
So if they just want to let it cool down by itself, how long does it take to cool down?
I would leave it overnight if you're going to do that. Be on the safe side. The water in the water heater, when it's heated up, is around 130 degrees. So 130 degree water is definitely going to burn you. If you get it colder, towards 80, 90, where it's not too hot, and it's not going to be too bad.
Okay, and then you said to turn the water off to the RV?
Yes, so once we cool the water and the water heater off, and now we turn the water off in the RV, so there's no more water supply coming in the water heater.
So that would be like at the house or the campground spigot?
At the campground, at the water spigot, or put the water heater in bypass mode. That's your other option. So our bypass mode is inside the door over here, and I would turn some valves for that. Sometimes it's behind the water heater inside. In this case, I just turn the water off going to the water heater.
Okay, so now we're to the flush in the water heater. So you're going to remove the plug or anode rod, which you're going to talk about the differences in those while this is draining.
Yep, it'll take a minute for it to drain out, so I'll show you what the differences in those are. So I'm going to take my ratchet.
And stand over to the side a little bit. I don't want to make this
way,
bumpy
that
for
way.
you guys.
Which way can you see me?
This is right in the middle.
Okay.
So I just see a whole bunch of
So these plugs are in different areas. Some of them are easy to get to, like this one. Sometimes they're up behind a spot. You might have to use a little longer extension or something. So every situation is different. I'm going to pull this out.
Maybe I'll tilt this down a little bit. You guys
I'm
are
just
going to move a little bit.
unthreading it by hand right now.
I'll tilt it a little. I don't want to get too close to the water. It's going to spray everywhere.
So now it's slowly dribbling and draining.
Leave that plug over
What?
there.
Here?
We need a video of it later. Put the plug down.
Well, I'm going to blow it away. I got to put it over there.
Okay.
So now it's slowly draining out. This little valve at the top is called your pressure relief valve. If you open that up, it comes out much faster. Well, it's air in the top of the tank, so water comes out the bottom. So while my boots are getting all wet and that's draining, hopefully the water noise isn't too much.
Well, let's go through the difference. This is aluminum. Put
Yes.
the anorods away for a minute. One at a
So
time.
we have an aluminum water heater tank. And with that, you just use a little plastic plug. Those come with your water heater from factory. And this plastic plug goes in the bottom of the tank, acts as a plug. It's also a safety device. If something was to fail on the water heater and it started getting too hot, this will melt to allow the water to come out of the water heater versus exploding the tank. And you do not want to use an anode rod inside of an aluminum water heater tank because you lose a safety device with this plastic plug in there.
So the aluminum water tank is which brand?
That is an Atwood or Dometic. They're interchangeable names. It used to be Atwood, now it's Dometic.
Okay. So now let's switch over to steel water tanks.
So steel water tanks have an anode rod, and this is a plug also. You see the threads in the bottom, plus this screws into the water heater. So what an anode rod does is when you have that calcium and sediment inside of the water heater tank, on a steel tank, that sediment can affect the water heater tank itself. So put my
It's
foot
getting
there.
noisy.
Put my foot there. Hopefully it doesn't go in my boot. So with that sediment going in that steel tank, it can corrode and rot out that tank. I'm trying not to get wet.
I know.
Erica sent me to get into the water like a waterfall. And so the anode rod protects your steel water heater tank. This does nothing for an aluminum tank.
Okay,
And there's
so-
two different types of anode rods also. There's magnesium or aluminum type. Aluminum lasts a bit longer, better for hard water, and you don't get a rotten egg smell with aluminum anode rod. The magnesium is the standard one. So if you don't have a problem, magnesium will work, but we also recommend using an aluminum one to make sure it's good.
Okay, I want to go through that a little bit more. 101 level. You put this anode into your tank, and the calcium and sediment, or the minerals in the water, whatever,
They will attack this.
that instead of the water tank.
Yes.
Once that is dissolved and there's no more, it's going to attack the water tank and put holes in the tank. It's going to eat
Correct.
the tank.
Yep, so
It's gonna look like
inside the anode rod looks like this. So everything on the outside of this has been depleted, and the next thing to go, this rod would disintegrate off of here. And at this point, when this is disintegrating and when this is gone, your water is now attacking your steel tank, and now you are at extreme risk of your tank walls getting very, very thin and a leak happening inside of your RV that you probably wouldn't know for a while.
Okay, so bring it just a little bit closer to the screen. So this is a brand
Probably
new
going to have a hard time
anode.
focusing. Yeah.
It's fine.
Okay.
And this one is, it should have been changed well before this, but
Yes.
it's still protecting it, but it doesn't have much more to protect. So if your anode is like this or gone, you're probably having some tank problems. You
So
definitely
these
want to be
get-
about half that size.
Yeah, about halfway used up is when you want to change them out. If you're flushing your anode rod or flushing your water heater out a couple times a year, you'll know what the life of your anode rod is. If it looks like it's just about new, good shape, put it back in. If you know it's getting close to being worn out, have one on hand and change out the next time.
And it's a good time to change it out always when you flush a water heater. Or you can check it, but that's usually once a year or so. Depending on how hard your water is, everyone's going to be a little different.
Okay, we are ready to flush now. So water is drained out. We have this water hose is on with fresh water. So we're going to put it in the water heater, turn the valve on, rotate this back and forth, and we might have to move the camera at the end. You'll see a bunch of white sediment coming out of it. We'll do this a couple times.
You can already see some sediment on the ground. And we flush ours 2 to 3 times a year because we live in our RV full time, so our sediment is not going to be that bad. Oh, there's some big chunks coming out. I don't know if you can see it or not. But if you don't flush it, like he was saying at the beginning, we have some reels on our Facebook page that shows some big, huge, hard chunks of calcium buildup and rust and other things that we got out of water heaters of people who didn't do it for years or didn't know that they were supposed to do it ever.
That one, I thought things were growing inside of that water heater.
So how long do you need to flush it out for?
What I'll do is the first time I put it in, I'll usually do a little bit longer, and until I stop seeing the big chunks come out. And there'll be a little bit of water built up in the water heater, where I'll shut it off here in a second, let the water drain out, and do it again until I stop seeing the gunk coming out of it. And
yes, pick up some of that, bring it to the camera.
so this is the calcium buildup that's coming out of there. So you see it kind of, it's like a milky, chalky type stuff. But that'll build up in there, turn to a really hard, crusty layer, and that's when it starts affecting your water heater. So.
Okay, so we had a comment on one of our reels of someone saying that, watch out, that broke in their water heater, broke off. Does that mean they're shoving it up too far, or it was cracked? You know, why would that happen?
It can crack. I've had this one itself for 4 years and use it quite often. I did have once started cracking right along this edge. So what I did, I cut it off. I used a heat gun. I put it back on there. So just keep an eye on it. You know, it was cracked for a while before I had to do anything with it at all. So if you start seeing a crack on there, replace it or repair it. These aren't that expensive.
Yeah,
I believe
like
they're less than
$12,
$15 range. Yeah.
It's under
So
20 for sure.
I should probably have a spare, you know, because they're
So
that
how
good of a
far
price.
did you shove that up there?
All the way.
All the way?
So that fits all the way in there. If you had a smaller water heater tank, you might not go in all the way, but this one, it goes in all the way. We have a 10-gallon tank.
Oh, right. Now let's talk about I always ask you the question, the tankless.
Oh,
I always forget the name.
so I don't know if you can see me or not.
No, I'll bring it
looking
back
at
up.
the water heater doing nothing.
Yeah.
So
There you are.
if you have a tankless water heater or on-demand water heater, both are the same thing, there's no tank in there that you need to flush out. Some of them do have a maintenance program that needs to be done, that you have to put like a tablet in it or something like that that cleans it and does work inside of there. I haven't personally done one of those. I've installed a couple of them, but they haven't been to the maintenance part of it. I know on the Girard water heater, those ones don't have any maintenance program that needs to be done, so they just said just keep an eye on leaks, and if you have to winterize it, drain the water out of it.
And
So
if people are asking, I wonder if I have a tankless water heater. They're expensive. They're an upgrade. So you either put the upgrade in or you have a high-end RV. So if you don't have a high-end RV, if you have like a $10,000 to $30,000 camper, you definitely don't have a tankless water heater.
right, and they started putting them in, getting more popular around the COVID time frame. One, because they were available and they were putting them in RVs. They called them upgrade because they were able to put them in to build RVs. Or if you upgraded it yourself or you bought a used RV, someone put it in there. So they operate a little bit differently. You don't need to flush the inside like we're doing this tank water heater.
Okay.
So ready to go for round 2.
Okay. So you were just letting the water pour out to get everything out?
Yes, and we talked for a while, so usually I do this faster. So if I don't see many chunks coming out of it this time, I didn't have a lot the first time, and if I don't see many chunks coming out this go around, we'll finish up.
And then let's talk about when you do our annual maintenance, and I have a video, I'll put that link in the description or the comments or something. We also sanitize our water, which we're not going to be able to make a video on that right now, but let's talk about that.
So sanitizing the water system is making sure we don't have any bleach or algae inside of the water lines in the water tank. So when this is draining it out, I'll be able to explain it a little bit better because I'm concentrating on this and I'm going to miss something.
But that's the time that we do it. So we're going to be sanitizing our lines tonight. So I can see how the person said it broke off because you are putting it all the way up there, so you want to be careful.
Yeah.
And standing right here, I am getting hit with some water, so it is a good flow.
And also, give myself a bath. So we'll also have this on a regular water hose. I usually use a flexible hose, which moves around a little bit easier. This one, when it has a pressure in it, it's really stiff to rotate the hose around.
Oh, the
so,
G.
Yeah, you have like a 0G type hose. Those are easier to flex it in and out of there. So I just grabbed this one because it was available.
And another thing to talk about, when you're doing this at campsites that are gravel or dirt, it makes a bigger mess. We're on cement right now, so that's nicer.
Yes, makes a big difference. So we'll do this one more time. I had still some good chunks of sediment coming out of there. Nothing that was major. I've seen a lot worse, trust me. And so now quickly on the sanitizing the system. So we use the bleach method when we sanitize the system, which is 1 ounce of bleach for every 8 gallons of water in your system. So we put the bleach. Ours, I can suck it in through our water pump to fill our tank. Every RV is a little bit differently in how you do it. Once I fill the tank completely up, then I run the pump, run bleach mixture through all the lines, let it sit overnight, 12 hours range. 8 would be good enough, but 12 is usually what it comes out to. I do it at nighttime with sleep. I flush it out the next morning and run all that through. And usually I do that and then I flush the water heater out. But also remember, when you are sanitizing your system, you do not want to run that bleach mixture through the water heater. So I put the water heater in bypass mode for that. With an aluminum tank, you can run some bleach through it. It won't cause any damage, but a steel tank, it definitely will. So just good practice not to do it.
But you just do it back to back because they both need to be done and you're doing water at one time?
It's just easier to shuttle the water off and make a mess all at one time.
Okay. It has nothing to do with flushing it, but we just do it at the same time.
Correct.
Okay, back to you.
So one little quick last rinse and then we'll be done.
Okay, so why don't you pick up a couple more of those sediment things for people who just joined and show what it looks like and what happens if you don't flush it. Just repeat what you said earlier.
So this is sediment that gets washed out of the water heater. So it's white. If I poke it around with my finger, we can get it crusted down. It's kind of almost like salt, type of a texture. When you work it around, you can get it to dissolve in your hand. But it builds up in there. These chunks can get really, really big, and they can, start blocking itself.
I don't know what I was doing. Okay, I hit a button. I'm sorry.
So this sediment, it can build up in the bottom. It can be really large chunks that are really hard. The one I did last week, I wanted to save one as a present, but I didn't know where to put it. So
you put it on a ring like a rock?
Right, because it was such a big chunk coming out of there. And that builds up around the heating element. Doesn't heat up the water quite as fast, and these chunks can work their way through your water system. They can plug up the check valves coming out of the water heater or in your shower faucets. All that stuff can get plugged up with the sediment if it keeps going through your water lines. I'll rinse my hand off here. Okay, so now we are ready to put the plug back in. It's had Teflon tape on it before, so we've got to peel some of that off.
So if someone was putting the anode in, do they need Teflon tape? It looks like it.
Yes.
Okay, so either way.
I have heard of people out there, I don't put tape on it and it works just fine, but anything I've ever put on with threads for plumbing, I put some Teflon tape on it, and I never had a problem with them leaking. Also, especially if you have a steel water heater with an anode rod, a little bit of Teflon tape on that keeps it from rusting solid to each other, and you don't have to fight it getting out next time.
Yeah.
So
it's like
it even can be tough.
Yeah. Everything's rusted on.
So this is just basic Teflon white
a little bit
tape.
Closer.
And we rotate it around.
Back just a little bit. I think the camera's... I can't see because there's a bunch of words on top of the screen at the bottom.
So once I get it started, I'll go around 3 times. There's no real exact science on this. If it was a gas line, it'd be a little more precise, but water lines, not so much.
And I need a little B-roll clip of this for a reel that we made yesterday.
So have a nice good coating of Teflon tape on there. Erica's gonna come around this way. So just thread it down there in the bottom. Be careful that you don't cross thread it, because if you do that...
Oh wait, you gotta take it out. You gotta put it right here, remember? It said it was sitting there.
Oh. You failed me.
So set it
now I gotta redo my Teflon tape, I think. Okay.
Oh, just set it there. You guys get to see the B-roll behind the scenes. When you see this reel, you'll be like, that was it. I watched that live.
Okay, that's in. I'll just tighten it up. It is only plastic, so you can only tighten it so much. So our plug is in, our relief valve on the top is still open. Now I'm going to turn the water back onto the water heater. it's going to start filling up the water heater. With this valve open in the top, it's letting air out of the water heater. So once it gets close, you'll hear it start burping a little bit, and the water starts coming out. I will just flip this valve to shut it.
Where does the water come out at?
Out of right here. This little red plug that kind of comes in here from factory, but it comes out of the side of this guy.
And you want it to do, is that broken?
Yeah, it's not really necessary.
Okay.
So this little red plug was in there. I never took it out till now because didn't have to, but it's crumbling because water heater's a couple years old. So yeah, water will come out of there. If you ever have a situation where your water heater is dripping out of that pressure relief valve, what you can do is turn the water off, open that valve, let the water drain a little bit. There's supposed to be a little air pocket in the top of your water heater. It allows room for expansion. The water heats up and cools off. So sometimes you get a little bit of drip on there. You can turn the water off, open that valve, let the water drain down a little bit, close the valve again, and you should be good. If it's constantly dripping, you got to change these once in a while because the sediment buildup gets built up on those. It's also a part of neglecting a water heater, not flushing it.
So we have a 10-gallon water heater. How long does that take to fill?
Should take a couple minutes.
Okay, so it's not that long.
No, not that long.
And a lot of people have 6.
Our water flow is about 2 gallons a minute, so 10-gallon water heater is about 5 minutes.
Okay, and if you guys have a question, you can type it in and I'll have them answer it live. I don't see any questions yet.
So once this is done filling, and then I will turn on the water heater, start heating water up again. Warning, you never want to turn your water heater on without it full of water. What can happen is your water heater element will burn up. So the element is designed to be inside of water when it's heating water up. If you turn it on when there's just air around it and no water around it, it will overheat itself and then the element will break on the inside. I had a repair like that last week. The customer didn't realize that it had the bypass still enabled on the water heater, so no water was in the water heater. They got to their campsite, turned the water heater on, and nothing worked. By the time they realized it was still in bypass mode, it was too late. I had to come out and change the element for them. So if you run it too long on gas, also during the same time frame, you can damage your tank. You also can melt the safety relief valve at the top, and it won't work properly. You're no longer protected of your water heater. So it's actually through Atwood Domestic as part of their warranty list. If we ever had a water heater call that wasn't working, they needed to replace it, they'll actually have us pull this safety valve out, take a picture of it to verify the water heater was not dry fired.
Those are really good tips. This is like so educational. That's the kind of stuff I like to do. Okay, so the last thing is just fill it. You talked about the dry firing and that little reel thing that we were doing. Why don't you just tell them, give them the other tip about people leaving the plug down there and they call because they, why do they call?
Yeah, this is a very common thing if you're in an area that you winterize your RV by draining out the water out of it and you leave it sit for the winter, of course. And sometimes, see, we're full. Flip that off. Now we're going to turn it on inside. So when they drain the water heater out for the winter, they take the plug out of it, let the water drain out. And a lot of times the water heater plug is just left sitting next to it, or anode rod in that case. It's in the storage bay next to the water heater, somewhere around there. And they go to start their RV up in the spring, and the water heater's in bypass mode, they turn the water on. They don't have any hot water, can't figure out why. Sometimes they might turn the water heater switch on and burn the element out, and have a repair bill after that because they have to change the parts and pieces, or it's just not going to work properly because there's no water flowing through it.
Okay, that's a good tip. So save you some money and a call.
Yes.
Is come out here, look to see if your stuff is in there, and don't turn your water heater on.
What I always like to do, some people put their water heater plug or anode rod back in after they drain it out. I like to leave it out. That way it's a good reminder, and looking things over in the springtime, you know, hey, there's no water in that. I got to make sure I put the plug in, and I'll flush it at the same time, and then turn it on after everything's full.
Okay, so now we're full of water. What's the next step? Are we done?
I'm done.
So you just got to turn your water heater on inside, let it warm up, and then you're good?
Yes, turn it on. Give us some time.
Okay. Well, thanks for joining us, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in. Happy camping.